mid-70s. That was kind of a shocking question. The answer is yes, actually. You have it in the biblical canon, for one thing, Song of Solomon. Okay? There's nothing pornographic in reading the Song of Solomon, yet it is pretty erotic. Okay? But there's no yuck factor to that. And I think about Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart, who in the Supreme Court's obscenity ruling, trying to nail down what is obscenity. His conclusion was, I know it when I see it. Okay? So I think the question is, when we encounter sexual material, the question is, where does this lead me? Does this actually lead me towards intimate relationship? Or does this make me want to go secretive? Can I celebrate this portrayal of sexuality as a gift? Or does this make me want to go hide in the bushes while God's looking for me in the garden? I mean, I think those are the kinds of questions. And I think it's hard to define it precisely.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we do the same thing in our dating relationships. We ask, how far can we go? How far is too far? And we always play with a line. And it's not the right question. The idea is more, how can I honor the other person? I mean, there's nothing, there's probably a fair amount of us that, I just said us in that. Bachelor watchers? What? Do you guys watch The Bachelor? There's a segment, you know, that in the final scenes where they get the last few of them, a key is offered for them to go to the honeymoon suite or whatever they call it, where they want to have this. It's the fantasy suite.
We have one person who will admit it.
There's another person that watches. Thanks, Hannah. I admit I have watched the show. And in some cases I like it, but nevertheless. But there's a part of our culture that almost says to them, well, of course you would. And I saw a clip of the recent one that's going on is one of the girls is offered the key, and I think she turns him down and says, no, I want to be able to respect myself and my daughter as she sees this show. And again, our society doesn't look at that and thinking, how can I honor one another? My hope is that he would see that as a person of respect. Somebody who honors herself, and that he would also see her as honorable for doing such a thing. And that, you know, in one sense, it's being offered. The hope is that he would do the same thing. I don't even want to offer it because it wouldn't be the honorable thing to do with each other. And so in a similar way, how can we do things to honor one another? And so when it appears on TV and things, we kind of get an idea, okay, is this honoring the person whom we're watching? Or is this dishonoring, and is this driving me in a direction I don't want to go? So that comes back to that idea of where's this leading? And so if you kind of know where that's heading, that should be a clue to us to say, whoop, time to turn it off, time to go to another station. You know, my wife and I had this as we were dating. We knew there were situations that we found ourselves in, whoa, this is getting tempting. And we don't want to put ourselves in situations that are going to be tempting. And so our joke was, okay, let's go get some pizza. It's time to go get some pizza because things are getting too... Well, you know where I was going with that. So.
We have a weird culture because on the one hand, the broader culture would look at this discussion as kind of quaint. Why are we worried about it? Okay, and yet at the same time, if somebody public, you know, celebrity or a leader, it's revealed they're caught up in pornography, then the same culture that says what in the world is a big deal turns around and treats them like a pervert. We also have a culture that does not honor marital sexuality very well. I used to read Tom Clancy books, and the hero, if you haven't ever been exposed to that, is a guy named Jack Ryan. And in the book, The Sum of All Fear, well, throughout all the books, Jack and his wife Kathy are always married. In the movie The Sum of All Fears, one of the opening scenes is Jack and Kathy in bed, and they aren't even engaged. So the screenwriters took this couple that in the novels is married, decoupled them, I'm sure because of some notion that marital sexuality is just kind of boring. That's kind of bizarre.
We've got a couple of questions and switch gears a little bit. Is that it right there?
Yes.
Okay. Why is it so easy to become addicted? It seems like some who see it are addicted right away. Is there a psychological aspect to it? And if so, what are some of those aspects?
Well, we're designed that way, for one thing. I mean, sexual desire is part of how we're made, how we're created, how we're wired, all right? So it's no mystery that when you look at easily available sexual material, sexually explicit material, that there can be a draw for that, all right? Especially, I think, for men. I mean, we talk sometimes about gender differences in terms of how we are aroused, and there's a prevailing notion that men are typically more visually respondent than women are. There is pornography targeted at women, by the way. It tends to be more narrative. So stories with context instead of just getting to the explicit picture. But I think it's how we're wired. So I don't think for me, there's no mystery as to what the draw is. Okay? I mean, there's edgier stuff that you kind of have to develop a taste for that most people would be repulsed by at first blush. But, you know, erotic material is erotic. And some people do seem to be more vulnerable than others. There may be some physiological, biological bases for that in terms of some people's brains are better at self-control than other people's brains are. Okay? Some people are more impulsive than others. Have higher capacity for delay of gratification than others, so there's differences just in terms of how our bodies and brains are developed. But yeah, I think that's one of the dangers is when you've got ready access to it. It's a very difficult thing, I think, to say no to. And you couple that with just the pervasiveness of sex in our culture, and I think it's real easy to become addicted.
And I would also add to that in the sense that we sometimes think, oh, because I'm addicted to it, so because I'm drawn to it so much, that there's something wrong with me. The reality is, again, it's the way God created us to be drawn to that. I mean, when you think about it, Adam and Eve, they were in the garden, they were naked, and they loved each other. They enjoyed that. It wasn't until their selfishness, their knowledge of good and evil came that they covered themselves. And so to know that, the beauty of seeing one another's bodies is the way that we are created. That's a good thing. Now again, that should be in the right relationship in the context, I think, the way God designed it for our spouses. And so again, I don't think it's a negative thing that we're necessarily drawn to it. However, any kind of thing that gets to an addictive nature is not healthy for us. And so when you look at it and it becomes something that we are drawn to time and time again that's not our spouse, it obviously creates all kinds of problems.
Can you speak to the narrative more? I mean, as far as just the books that some would consider, you know, smut, or the, I guess just I don't remember.
Daniel Steele type thing?
The heaving bosom books is what we talked about earlier. And I mean, I know I've seen them, you know, growing up, and, you know, they were in my house and da-da-da. I mean, you hit on it before, that it's no different as far as visual pornography, as far as where it leads you and the connections it makes in your mind. But do you feel like it's as addicting or as harmful?
One of the things I hear a lot, I work mostly with men on this issue, and I hear a lot of shocked wives who profess a total lack of comprehension as to how their husbands could possibly be interested in this sort of stuff, and how they could possibly fantasize about other women and so forth and so on. I kind of scratch my head with that, because at any Meijer store you can see a whole section of bookshelf with romance novels that aren't targeted at men. Okay, that's not the target market. So